Good evening, trustees. This is the regular meeting on Wednesday, November 6, 2024. I would like to call the meeting to order. I would like to ask all those who are able to stand for the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge we are hosted in the lands of Mississaugas of Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Thank you. Please remain standing for the playing of O Canada. Thank you. Please be seated. At this time, I would like to ask for a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda. Trustee Hassan, Trustee Gauss, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried. We will move on to celebrations. As you are aware, November is Hindu Heritage Month, so happy Hindu Heritage Month to everyone. We have two trustees who will be speaking on this. Trustees Sri Skandaraja and Trustee Pei, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I'll begin. I've made these remarks before, but since it's a new term, I thought it would be nice for the new trustees to hear them. Just to talk a little bit about Hinduism. It can be quite difficult to discuss Hinduism, which is a 4,000-year-old way of life, and how it informs my life and perhaps many of our students. This is particularly difficult considering the inherent plurality that constitutes Hinduism. So I thought I would begin with a quote from a former Chief Justice of the Indian Supreme Court, P.B. Gajendra Khatkar. And he says, quote, "When we think of the Hindu religion, we find it difficult, if not impossible, to define Hindu religion or even adequately describe it. Unlike other religions in the world, the Hindu religion does not claim any one prophet. It does not worship any one god. It does not subscribe to any one dogma. It does not believe in any one philosophic concept. It does not follow any one set of religious rites or performances. In fact, it does not appear to satisfy the narrow traditional features of any religion or creed. It may broadly be described as a way of life and nothing more." End quote. Now, having said all that, with that context, Hinduism has no founder, no prophet, no holy book. In fact, there is no conversion practice to Hinduism. You cannot become a Hindu. You just are through the way you live a good karmic life. Hinduism is a way of life, or what we call dharma. Hinduism allows you to be, to exist, to worship in a multitude of ways. Hinduism allows you to be polytheistic, believing in many gods. Henotheistic, believing in one God, but accepting that other gods exist. Monotheistic, believing in one supreme God. You can even be an atheist and be a Hindu. There's a strain of atheism that runs in Hindu philosophy, showing Hinduism by form believes in spirituality over dogma. All things are up for debate, even God. And I believe it is this plurality in thought that has allowed Hinduism to survive and thrive through adaptation. It is this diversity in thought that guides how I live my own life. The acceptance of diversity of thoughts and religions is central to Hinduism and has allowed it to survive for thousands of years. So when people ask me what my thoughts are on other religions, I always say, in my religion, where there are thousands of gods, why not believe in one more? And I just want to also quickly say that I know Remembrance Day is coming up and we won't have a board meeting before it. So I just wanted to make sure that we also remember the millions of Hindus and Sikhs and Muslims who fought in the world wars on behalf of the British Empire. And the many that lost their lives, many of the soldiers who fought in World War II, returned to their colonies, understood that though they had been fighting for their empire's freedoms, they themselves were not free. And these experiences were an impetus for many of them to fight for their own independence and freedoms in the colonies, which they eventually got shortly after World War II, teaching us that the greatest responsibility that freedom affords us is the freedom to fight for others. And as our veterans have shown us, it is only through a pursuit of freedom for others that we ourselves can truly be free. And I know that the Hindu Heritage Month Committee has prepared a wonderful slide for us. So I'll just go through some of the slides before handing it over to Trustee Pei. The Hindu Heritage Committee, of course, we have to thank them. They've done tremendous work this year and throughout the year for the month. This Heritage Month has been celebrated by our students and staff throughout the month of November due to a motion that was passed by trustees in 2018. And it's also recognized in the province of Ontario since 2016. And in part, the Hindu Heritage Month Act, passed by the province states, quote, Ontario's home to a large and vibrant Hindu community. Since the first Hindu immigrants arrived in Canada at the beginning of the 20th century, Hindu Canadians from across Ontario have made significant contributions across all fields: science, education, medicine, law, politics, business, culture, and sports. I would be remiss if I didn't say tech. Hindu Canadians have helped build Ontario into the multicultural success story that it is and have helped to build this province into the best place to live, work, and raise families. Moving on to our next slide, the theme for Hindu Heritage Month this year was Anta Shanti for Vishwa Shanti, which is Sanskrit phrase that conveys that to foster world, Vishwa, peace, Shanti, we need to have inner Anta peace, Shanti. So inner peace is the foundation to build peace in our immediate environment, and a peaceful state of mind is essential for the courage, confidence, and compassion that's required to act for the greater good of humanity. An in-person celebration was recently held at Calico Public School to kick off Hindu Heritage Month at the TDSB. We want to give a special thank you to Principal Manu Padma for hosting the event, and to our special guest, Nitin Shan, Acting Chair, and Leola Pon, Associate Director, for participating in this wonderful event. And I will now be happy to turn it over to Trustee Pei.
Thank you, Trustee Sri Kandaraja. It's my great honor and pleasure to recognize Hindu Heritage Month in November. As a member of the Planning Committee, I want to congratulate the staff and the committee volunteers for putting together such an excellent program. The Hindu Heritage Month Committee had put together some outstanding educational opportunities to celebrate the Hindu heritage throughout the month of November. Let's showcase a few. Next slide. Let's take a moment to watch a brief video that highlights the festivities.
Good morning and welcome to Hindu Heritage Month.
Everybody, welcome to Calico Public School. We are honored to have the launch of the Hindu Heritage Month 2024 here at Calico.
Our theme this year is Antah Shanti for Vishwa Shanti. What it means is inner peace for world peace. I think everybody would agree that unless we feel peaceful and happy, we cannot spread happiness to our neighbors, our family, our friends, and expanding into the world. So this is our beautiful theme.
Hi, I'm Hamani, a grade 12 student from A.Y. Jackson Secondary School, and today I'm here at Calico Public School for our official Hindu Heritage Month launch. Today we have a variety of performances lined up, so I hope you enjoy.
Hinduism is a really rich culture, and we're so honored to be able to present it through dance and many other forms. We've done this performance many times before in previous years, and we're just really excited to present to you once again the Hindu culture and our stories.
For me, learning about Hinduism reminds me of why opening our minds and our hearts to new ideas and to meet new people is such an important part growing up and becoming good human beings and who contribute to our communities. It's a place where everyone belongs.
As a Hindu myself, it's great to see this happening in Toronto District School Board. I came here at the age of 16 as a refugee youth, and I wish I had opportunities like this where my identity was affirmed, my faith was recognized. And to have this today, so the young people, students, children who are growing up in our system are able to see themselves reflected in the school. They can have a sense of pride, joy, a sense of belonging because of these activities, but also they get to share the best of their own culture and faith with other communities around them.
A poster challenge was held inviting all TDSB students to enter an image to capture this year's theme, Antah Shanti for Vishwa Shanti. We are pleased to share with you the 3 winning students from each categories. Kindergarten, grade 3 category. Adia, grade 1, Fleming Public School. Grade 4, 6 category. Lakshya, Grade 4, Forest Hill Junior and Senior Public School. Amia, Grade 12, Don Mills Collegiate Institute. Author Zania Wadwani will be presenting her latest book, Once Upon a Sari, to all TDSB students from grade 1 to 5. This virtual presentation will be taking place on Tuesday, November 19, from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. No registration is required. Educators may find this information on the internal TDSB website. Several dance workshops and activities that include yoga and a chess tournament at SATEC were offered to our students to further learn about the Hindu heritage. Additional resources that include a Hindu heritage toolkit are available from our TDSB professional library for all educators to use. Please follow Hindu Heritage Month on X for daily calls throughout the month of November at TDSB_HHM. The Hindu community is a peaceful and a vibrant community that contributes greatly to our board, city, and country. To the over 10,000 Hindu students and many Hindu staff, I applaud your commitment to excellence and hard work. You have much to be proud of in sharing your rich culture and heritage. The same as this year, Anta Shadi for Vashwa Shanti, meaning inner peace for world peace, is much needed message for us today. It truly represents the essence of the Hindu culture that see each person having a divine spark and the world as one family. I'm so delighted to host along my trustee Hastings, Canadian Organization of Hindu Heritage Education, and the Toronto Asian Parents Association, the first Hindu Heritage Month celebration of TDSB at Erhag Secondary School on November 23, 2024. Our committee had put together such a fabulous show and welcome each of you to join us on November 23rd. With the recent uprising incident of hate and violence against Hindu community surrounding the city, it's time for all of us to stand united in solidarity with the TDSB Hindu community to fight against Hindu phobia. Together, let us continue to build a future rooted in respect, understanding, and shared humanity. On a final note, we wish to thank the Hindu Heritage Month Volunteer Planning Committee for their dedication. A special thank you to the TDSB executive leads, Krish Chakrabarti and Nadara Prasad. And this year's co-chairs, Principal Padma Manu and community member Dr. Rajini Sharma. Wishing everyone a wonderful Hindu Heritage Month throughout the month of November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Sri Skandaraja and Trustee Pei. I know we have a timed item at 7:30 after my remarks, but I want to do part of my remarks for a purpose, and then we'll get into Integrity Commissioner and come back to my rest of my remarks, because I would like to do a special recognition first. Before we proceed, I also want to welcome our former Associate Director, now in interim director role, our interim director, Stacy Zucker. This is her first official meeting at the board. Let's give a round of applause to welcome you. And as trustees know, the last meeting we had passed a motion to appoint Stacy Zucker as the interim director for 3 months. So I wish her all the best during the next 3 months in this role. Just quickly, previously Stacy was an associate director for us of modernization and strategic resource alignment, where she oversaw complex multidisciplinary portfolios, including finance, facilities, and capital management, information technology, and transportation. With over 20 years of experience in education, Stacy joined the TDSB after serving as associate director of support services in Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, where she oversaw the budget and capital planning processes, information technology, and student transportation. Her experience also extends back to her work with the Halton Catholic District School Board. So thank you, Stacy, for taking on this role and helping us through the transition as we pursue our search for the permanent director. Now, the reason I wanted to do this, this session prior to the IC's report is that we have a very good news that we have to share, but also with mixed emotions, that we are here to welcome our newly Councillor-elect Rachel Cherneslin, who was our chair to our board. So thank you very much, Trustee Cherneslin. Today is your official last day, so we can still refer to you as Trustee Cherneslin, who had helped our board for 6 years, first as a trustee in the first term and as a chair last 2 years, leading the organization. And thank you very much for all your work in helping to prioritize students and also to help to move our board forward on our priorities. But also particularly thank you for supporting my role as the vice chair when I was vice chairing, tag teaming with you for the 2 years. Working together was a pleasure, and I would like to now offer you an opportunity to say a few words for us as you wrap up your role here and take on the new challenge at City Hall. Let's give a big round of applause to welcome her.
Thank you, Acting Chair Shan. It was a pleasure to serve alongside you for almost 2 years, and very appreciative for the help that you've given me in the last, since the 24th of July when I went on leave, and you just immediately stepped in on behalf of the board. So thank you so much for that. So thank you also for the opportunity to say a few words this evening. A sincere thank you for your leadership over the recent months as acting chair during my leave of absence, Vice Chair Shan, while I pursued City Council in Don Valley West. I want to begin this evening by thanking the 42,000, it still kind of boggles my mind when I say that number, but 42,000 staff who make up the TDSB across schools and all the departments in this organization. As the chair of the board and as a trustee, but particularly as the chair of the board, I had the opportunity to visit schools and sites across the city. And I've had the privilege of witnessing and truly witnessing the magic that happens in our schools in each of our buildings on a daily basis. I want to especially recognize each and every one of the administrators in the schools that make up my ward, Ward 11, Don Valley West. And I actually feel quite sad because this has all happened so quickly, because I'll be sworn in on Friday and I'm leaving today as my last day at TDSB, that I haven't had a chance to actually visit my schools and say thank you in person to each of those administrators. But you know, they have taken my calls, welcomed me into their schools on so many school visits over the 6 years. They've answered my emails with so much patience. And they've brainstormed together with me to solve so many challenges. And they have created so many positive opportunities for students and families during sometimes the most challenging moments, but always going above and beyond for student success and well-being. And so, although I'm, you know, for anyone who's listening tonight, I have no idea I kind of meant to mention to them that I would speak tonight, but even that didn't happen. But I want them to know how grateful I am for all the work that they do with our students. To the senior team, those of you who are listening this evening and those in the room, thank you for your leadership during some of the most unprecedented, truly unprecedented times in public education that we've had over the last 6 years. Your tenacity and your willingness to always put students' needs first is what I will remember the most and I will take with me. To the Executive Council on the outside of the horseshoe, I want to thank you for your thoughtful discussions, your patient explanations, and your willingness to experiment with new solutions. I really saw a tremendous flexibility in the staff of the TDSB and in the leadership team, and that's so important when we think about the challenges that we face in the city and going ahead into the future. To the staff who make up trustee services and the governance department, I haven't even seen Denise until now, so oh my goodness. Your attention to detail, your impeccable organizational skills, and your steadfast dedication to good governance, it's so important. It's so important. They're central to the operation of the Board of Trustees and the TDSB and Faith in Public Education. I could not have chaired countless board meetings, those hours and hours and hours of board meetings without you, and the committee meetings without your support and without your guidance. And I am so appreciative of all the work that happens behind the scenes that people don't see, but it couldn't happen without all of you. And that includes the staff that are doing all the tech and all of that as well, because there are a lot of people that go into these board meetings. And finally, to my colleagues around the table, trustees, those that make up this current board, but also those who I have worked with previously on the 2018 board. It has been nothing short of an honor to serve the students and the families of Toronto alongside you. You each bring vital, unique perspectives to this boardroom, and you demonstrate in real time what a healthy democracy can make possible. I want to thank you for electing me as chair of this board and putting your faith in me to lead and serve. The moments that have made me most proud are the ones in which we have spoken to each other with respect, with dignity, and with empathy, when we have deeply disagreed, and there have been those times too. If I can make one final request to you, it is that we continue and you continue to listen to each other with open minds and open hearts. Drive into someone else's ward to better understand the unique diversity and needs of all of our students. Drive out, drive in to all of the different wards. Visit their schools. See the things that make their wards, those challenges they face, real. That will help you move forward as a board. All students, regardless of where they come from, whether it's from the wealthy communities, whether it's from underserved communities, all of them deserve the chance to thrive in public education. The foundation our students receive in their classrooms during these formative years sets them up for rich professions and rich lives. And that's why it's important that we talk to each other. We each know our own community's needs, but we need to represent the families of the entire city. I also know that sometimes it can feel that sometimes it does feel like we operate in a fishbowl. We do in TDSB. In Toronto, you often only hear about when things go wrong, when they don't go as planned, when they go wrong. And of course, we have a responsibility to address those challenges and to grow from them and make amends. But after having served the board for 6 years, what I really understand is that the vast majority of the time we do get it right. We get it right for our students, and we should be proud of that work that we have done and that work that we have supported. And that's including around this table. The health of public education in a community is a barometer of the health of that community overall. While I may not be sitting with you at this table after tonight, I will be looking forward to finding ways to continue to collaborate with you between the city and the school boards. In the end, we are all serving the same people, the same children, the same families, the same communities. They are all our students. I will forever be a champion for public education for the students and families who make up this city. And I encourage all of you to reach out to me because I look forward to continuing our many conversations in my new role as City Councillor of Don Valley West and to our continued collaboration. Thank you so much for the opportunity to serve the Toronto District School Board. It has been the privilege of a lifetime. And I want to wish everybody the best. And I want to say that I'm going to go back to being just a regular parent in the TDSB, which is a wonderful thing as well. And I can't wait to see what you guys do next. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
One motion, which Trustee Patel, where are you going? Let me see. Email it to me. Email it to me.
Thank you, Rachel. She is.
Yeah, you should.
You should. You don't want to vote on it. No. Okay. Trustees, if you can take your seats, we'll continue with the agenda. Thank you, trustees. I'm going to pause my announcements at this time and come back to it because there's a timed item that we had for 7:30, so we'll move on to that item. This is an item from Integrity Commissioner. So it is item number 14. So we'll move to that item and then come back to the rest of the items. I would like to now request our Integrity Commissioner to introduce the item.
Hello, good evening. Thank you. Sorry, I was just coming on, so I think I heard Integrity Commissioner introduce the item, so I think that's me. Is that correct?
Sorry, yes.
Chair? I can go ahead, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
My audio was connecting. So, so good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'm here tonight because I have a report from one of my investigators on your agenda. That report obviously is in the agenda. It's before you. I presume that you've all had a chance to have a look at it. In this report, my investigator, and I obviously have reviewed it and concurred with my investigator's findings, that there was a breach by Trustee Hassan of Section 6.2B of the Code, So that's our view of it. But ultimately, we also found that that was due to essentially what amounts to an error in judgment made in good faith. So we've recommended no penalty in respect of that technical breach, which we've also laid out our rationale for in the report itself, which is before you. If you have any questions for me for the purposes of clarifying any details that you don't quite understand, I'm more than happy to address those at this point.
Trustees, any questions? Any trustees have any questions? Anybody online? Seeing none. Sorry. Is there a question? Trustee Arts?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, we have, I know in our calendars for trustees, we have a, we have a calendar item. We have some calendar items coming up for trustee PD. But just looking back through my calendar, we actually, in this iteration of the board, have really not engaged in very much learning together on the aspect of governance and different aspects. I know whether or not you're new, I know when I first came in as a trustee, the outgoing trustee counseled me on things that were in breach of the code of conduct, and that was their practice, and told me I should be doing the same. I thankfully had some background before to do that, but I know a lot of that PD was really important in the former board. So I'm wondering if I could request as a trustee for more coming in the new year, opportunities to engage in that professional learning for us.
Thank you. Trustee Arts, is there any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. So the first thing is to move to receive the item. Is there a mover and a seconder for this? Trustee Hastings moving, seconded. Anyone seconding it? Trustee Laskin is seconding it. Okay, so their first thing is to that the report be received. There's three parts to this, just to explain to everybody. First is to receive the report, and then there would be a determination where a breach happened or not, regardless of what happens with this vote, that would be considered as well, whether the breach happened or not. And then the third one, if it's found that the breach happened, then the third thing to discuss is what the sanctions are. Where the recommendation by IC is that there be no sanctions, but the trustees can determine that as well. Trustee Patel, do you have a?
It's a question of clarification. So after the receipt, what happens? I have a motion. Does it go after the receipt?
Yeah, so I'm told by governance that regardless of whether it's being received or not, this is the first motion. The second part will also be considered whether their breach occurred or not. So the first one is this motion that's on the screen. And the second one would be some trustee would have to move either way, move that a breach happened or move that a breach did not happen, and then that will be a vote.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. We are now, are we doing e-scribe or hands? Okay, hands. All those in favor of receiving the report? Yeah. So, trustees, put your hand up clearly so that our governance team can count. And those who are opposed to receiving the report?
Mr. Skanaraja?
Okay, that is defeated. And from the advice that I've gotten, regardless of this decision, the next consideration still happens, which is whether a breach occurred or not. Do any of the trustees wish to move any motion on either part of the decision?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think I have passed a motion to Joseph Davers. Is that motion goes now? I do not have much to speak on that. I just want the motion to be on.
Put it.
Good evening, trustees. And this is my motion. I would like to bring a motion that Trustee Hassan did not breach 6.2b of the code as mentioned in the report. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Nunziata? Okay, so just remember, folks, if you're voting yes to this, means you're agreeing that the breach did not happen. So just remember, breach. The motion is the breach did not happen, and then all those who agree with that will vote yes here. All those do not agree with that would not vote no. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, hearing no discussion, do we go to e-scribe or do we want hands? Sorry. You're opening on e-scribe, but it's okay. So the vote is on the statement that that Trustee Hassan did not breach the. It's open on e-scribe. Trustee Raja Kulasingam in favor. Trustee Pei. Trustee Siskandaraja.
In favor?
And Trustee Lalka Rodman. Order. Okay. Okay. That's carried. So we will not need to discuss sanctions as the vote that suggested that the breach did not happen passed. Thank you. And thank you very much, Integrity Commissioner, for joining us.
Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, we will move back onto my chair's announcements. Sorry, trustees, for those breaks and all the other things that are happening. We just wanted to make sure that the Integrity Commissioner is not spending long hours with us at this meeting. As you know, there are lots of consequences to that. And also, we wanted to make sure that Trustee Cherneslin had her farewell speech as well. Anyways, November is Indigenous Education Month. As you know, we honor it and celebrate it and remember and do activities around it at Toronto District School Board. Throughout the month, students, staff, community members honor this month as opportunities to deepen knowledge, to learn from our shared histories, and to strengthen our relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. The Urban Indigenous Education Center has organized virtual speaker series for students from grade 6 to 12, and details are available on the TDSB website under news for staff. I also would like to urge all the staff to take this time during this month and during all months coming up to learn more, reflect more, and commit more to advancing truth and reconciliation. The first week of November is also Holocaust Education Week, where we honor the survivors of the Holocaust and commemorate those who were murdered by the Nazis. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the staff, all the educators, all the community members who are working hard to make sure that we continue to have opportunities to learn about Holocaust and the impact, and continue to learn from it to reflect on it for us to have as lessons for today. Heritage Month, we already heard from Hindu Heritage Month. I want to take this opportunity to thank the team of volunteers, the educators who volunteer their time in addition to being teachers. That's already a fairly demanding job to give their time to organize all the events and activities for Hindu Heritage Month. I was fortunate to be at the launch event, which you saw some videos of, and happy to see the Heritage Month grow. Last month, we also had, as part of the Islamic Heritage Month activities, pleasure of attending the Sabr and Shukr Reflecting on Islamic Heritage event at David and Mary Thompson Collegiate, along with Trustee Laskin, Trustee McLean, and Trustee Hastings at the school in Scarborough. And it was wonderful to see thoughtful programming and particularly many student representatives from Muslim Students Associations who were demonstrating their commitment to affinity spaces and to promoting greater understandings among all communities. On November 11th, we will be honoring Remembrance Day, as we do every year, to honor those who gave their lives to serve our country. Thanks to all the trustees who have signed up to be at different ceremonies across the city to pay our respect on behalf of the school board. Moving on to something that we heard with great sadness this week, that we learned of the passing of Murray Sinclair, a former member of Canada's Senate, leading legal scholar, and one of Canada's first Indigenous judges. Murray had played an instrumental role as the chair of Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, which documented the legacy of residential school system, but also documented the personal experiences that survivors shared, and tabled 94 calls to action for truth and reconciliation. At the Toronto District School Board, we continue to strive to live up to Murray's legacy through championing Indigenous rights, justice, and truth. I would like to now pause and ask everyone to join, if you're able to, also to stand for a moment of silence in honor of Murray Sinclair. Thank you. As we remember, let us also remind ourselves, and I think it's something that Murray Sinclair often emphasized, as we are part of an education setting, it is important to remember the words, and paraphrasing, often said that because education was the primary tool of oppression, that the education holds the very critical role in reconciliation. So we have a lot of work to do to reverse the impact that education system has had. And we, being part of this system, have a greater responsibility in the role of reconciliation. So let's continue to read and remind ourselves of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action, particularly those calls that deal with the field of education. I want to move on to the Grassy Narrows investigation that is happening. I had connected with the investigator appointed by the Ministry of Education, Patrick Case, around the scope and the scale of the investigations, and I have offered at that time, and I continue to offer full cooperation to the investigation. And I know many trustees have taken the time to meet one-on-one and share your input and your suggestions and your concerns and your feedback and your recollection of what happened. It is important for the investigator to hear from you, and so thank you very much for taking the time. And thanks to Patrick Case for reaching out to all the trustees and administrators to continue to gain more information as he gathers the data first, and then we'll be producing a report shortly. Once again, as a school board, as trustees, we continue to offer our full cooperation for the investigation, and we're hoping to have recommendations come out of it that will make our policy stronger, our procedures stronger, but also will continue to offer the outdoor experiences that we need to continue to offer to our students. As you know, that budget consultation process by the ministry has begun, and they have asked us to give input on key areas such as core education funding model reform, special education funding, efficiencies and reducing administrative burden, community use of schools, student safety and well-being, safe and accepting schools. So the staff are gathering information and will be providing a submission. And it's important for us to continue to give our input as the leading school board, as the largest school board in Ontario, with almost 250,000 students, what we would like to see change in how we are funded in the system. Next, I would like to move on to our continuing effort to build a stronger relationship with the Elder Council and also to find ways to make things better on our end. So this month I wrote to Elder Redbird and to the Elder Council updating on the discussions that we held with the Board of Trustees in response to the concerns raised by Elder Council involving the Kapapa Machuge Wandering Spirit School. My office is actually requesting a consideration from them to meet with the trustees, a meeting between the Elder Council and the trustees to help us align our efforts and gain valuable insight as to how we can move forward together. There's a lot of work to be done on our end, and hoping that this meeting will inform and guide our path forward. Recently, I was also able to take part in an informal announcement by Mayor Chow at Margana Collegiate Institute, along with Trustee Rajwani, about increasing student nutrition support to few more students and schools through the city's effort. It is a small increase, but one of the commitments that the mayor has made is to advocate to the other levels of government to make it a universal student nutrition program in Toronto. Much deserved, much delayed, and we have, as a board, have always been championing this as through our motions and our letters. So we will continue to work with the mayor to make that a reality in our schools. We hope to deliver on it. That's it. I think the next one is also as critical, the advocacy around childcare spaces. As you know, we are part of the City School Board's Advisory Committee. It was raised there. We had sent a letter initially to former Minister of Education, Todd Smith, signed by the Toronto Catholic District Board, Toronto District School Board, and the Mayor's Office, and the Chair of the Economic Development Committee at City. But the minister changed after we wrote the letter. So seeing the new minister and has seen the approach of wanting to listen and wanting to hear more about what our needs are, we will be resending that letter again to the new minister, hoping for an engagement on that topic, because I know, as many of you know, the 48 previously approved childcare capital projects cancellation in Toronto schools hurt us greatly, hurt our future greatly, and it's important that we advocate for those more than 3,000 childcare spaces in high needs areas that are not being built because of the cancellation. So we'll continue to advocate on that. In line of good news and bad news is not necessarily bad news, but a sad news that we have one of our big pillars of our Toronto District School Board, Andrew Gowdy, who has headed the planning department so well, retiring from TDSB. I know the director will, as interim director, will speak more about his role and his commitment, but 30 plus years of shaping what has happened in this board. Every corner of this board has your impact, your signature, and as I mentioned earlier in my remarks at another committee, that a planning lead who came with so much empathy and so much care in the work that you do was phenomenal to see. But I'm also glad that you're leaving behind a staff team that has that culture built. So looking forward to seeing you more, but I'm also sure that you have a well-deserved retirement waiting for you. Thank you very much, Andrew Gowdy. Let's give a big round of applause for this work. Thank you. Trustees, as a wrap up, this will be my last meeting as the acting chair of the school board for this school year. And I want to thank you because last 3 years have had its own share of challenges. Stepped into this role, it's great that Trustee Jonas Lynn has become a counselor, but it was an unexpected role immediately, but I signed up to be vice chair, so it is bound to happen when the chair is absent. But I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your collegial, your constructive feedback, the support. We've had a tremendous amount of challenges as we went into the school year, but you've been great support. You've always reached out to find ways to make things work at the boardroom. So I want to take this time to say thank you for all of your work and the commitment, and looking forward to finding ways in which, regardless of whatever the capacity is, continuing to work with all of you in the coming months and coming couple of years. Thank you very much. And that concludes my chair's announcement. All right, so we are moving on to number 9, reports from trustees appointed to external organization and student trustees. We'll start with the student trustees first. Trustee Bell, Trustee Zing, and Indigenous Student Trustee Bell, Student Trustee Zing, and Indigenous Student Trustee Vestra.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you guys are all doing amazing. I want to start off with something that we student trustees are really excited about, which is Asta ACO. So this week, from Thursday, November 7th to Sunday, November 10th, we will be attending the Asta ACO's Fall General Meeting. And this conference will give us the opportunity to engage in meaningful discussions. Some topics include curriculum, equity, as well as truth and reconciliation. And we will also get the chance to network with other student trustees within Ontario and meet many like-minded student leaders. Moving on to Student Senate. The first one is cell phone policy consultation. So during the October Student Senate meeting, the cell phone policy and its effectiveness within the classroom was discussed, specifically from the point of view of students. So enforcement by teachers was brought up, and it was found that cell phones were regularly needed to complete classwork or communicate with clubs and councils. So the Student Senate collectively proposed solutions that would support enforcement and ways to improve the written document.
Good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to see you all once again this month. Hope everyone's doing well. But on the topic of Student Senate, the Student Senate is working to restructure the Senate in regards to the newly introduced two learning center system. The Student Senate hopes to improve internal operations as well as effective representation of all students within the TDSB. This is part of the review of the student leadership policy currently in progress. Oh, sorry, it's still my turn. The Student Senate hopes to introduce new ways of connecting with students across the board to better inform their initiatives. With this, a more engaging online presence is needed with the Student Senate. Sorry, I messed it up. Which the Student Senate is working diligently to achieve.
Thanks, Darian. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, so moving on to new business, the Center of Excellence for Black Student Achievement and Youth Participatory Action Research Conference was successfully held at TMU not too long ago this month. And with that particular piece, the Center of Excellence for Black Student Achievement was able to host their 3rd annual YPAR conference. This particular conference, I saw a lot of trustees and superintendent faces, which was always welcomed. And we were able to welcome Black students to be able to present their research on variety of different topics, whether that was equity, curriculum, extracurricular activity, or equity within the classroom as well. So I had the privilege to be able to close off the session and also be able to be a researcher with my 3rd year with the YPAR program. Moving on to menstrual equity and Period Ontario, I was also privileged to be able to attend Period Ontario's Period Day of Action in person downtown Toronto outside of City Hall. With this particular piece, it really echoes the work that we were able to do over the summer with members of the Ontario Student Trustees Association, Period Ontario, the Toronto Youth Cabinet, and many other student trustees and students across the province. And that was the particular piece in partnership with Shoppers Drug Mart and the Ministry of Education to provide 23 million menstrual products to school boards across Ontario over the next 3 years and to renew that program that was previously put forward, and being able to speak at that particular press conference. Echoing work that has been done in the past, the Toronto Youth Cabinet and public school boards and public school board members were able to host a budget consultation for their TYC general monthly meeting. So the Toronto Youth Cabinet, alongside multiple different student groups, community members, and representation from public student trustees from both public and Catholic school boards, were able to basically meet together and collaborate to consult on the municipal budget and pieces that are really essential to municipal budget as well. This further echoes the work that myself, student trustee Joy Goodluck, and Stephen Mensah from the Toronto Youth Cabinet, along with our school boards and our representation as well, were able to pass a historical joint motion that was able to increase the youth participatory budget from $0 to $2.1 million towards nutrition programs, youth hubs, and resource creation. And that was a really big accomplishment last term, and it just echoes the work that we're still putting into for the near future as well.
Thank you, Angelica. Now on to our media and events. On October 29th, myself, student trustee Zing and Bell, and also executive members of the Student Senate attended the Toronto Catholic District School Board Student Leadership Impact Team General Meeting. This provided us a chance to network with leaders from our neighboring school board and learn from their Student Senate leadership team in regards to running and engaging assembly meetings.
Great. Thank you very much for listening to our report. And we look forward to what this boardroom holds for later on. Hopefully not too long, but most likely very long. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to our student trustees and Indigenous student trustee for all your work, and thank you for championing public education amongst our young people and children. Any other reports from trustees appointed to external committees or organizations? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which will be Director's Leadership Report.
Thank you, and through the chair, I just want to thank everybody for your warm welcome and your support as I begin in the role of interim director. It is a great honor and privilege to serve in this role, and I look forward to working alongside families, staff, students, and trustees as we support all TDSB students. So thank you. As acting chair mentioned about childcare in his report, I would like to provide some further updates with regards to our early years programming at TDSB. So in partnership with various organizations, the TDSB supports the provision of a range of early years programs in its schools. This includes early on child and family centers, licensed childcare for children from birth to age 4, and before and after school programs for children between the ages of 4 and 12. The TDSB supports 225 independently operated childcare programs for children aged 4 and under, and supports approximately 400 before and after school programs for students in kindergarten to grade 6, provided through licensed childcare, authorized recreational and skills building programs, and the TDSB's own internally operated extended day program. In September 2024, 7 new before and after school programs were developed to create new spaces for over 300 TDSB families. In addition, the board directly operates the extended day program, which is a fee-based before and after school program, which currently provides programming for up to 930 TDSB students in kindergarten to grade 6 at 23 school locations. The extended day summer program, operated at 12 TDSB schools in the past summer, provided programming to 400 students over the course of a 7-week program from July 2nd to August 16th. TDSB continues to operate 75 early on child and family centers in TDSB schools, and we continue to expand this programming to best support the needs we identify of young learners and their families. So approximately 8,000 children and their parents or caregivers accessed this programming last year. In 2022, TDSB entered into a partnership with Early Childhood Development Initiative to create and deliver early on programming specifically for Black families with young children in 2023. This pilot project, which was made possible through a funding grant provided by Toronto Children's Services, where culturally responsive and inclusive programming supports early learning for children that celebrate and affirm Black families and their identities. And just a plug, as I think about those across the system who make early learning possible for our youngest learners, I want to remind everyone that applications are open for early French immersion for junior kindergarten until the end of November. So thank you. As we begin the month of November, I want to recognize the significance of Indigenous Education Month at TDSB. Throughout the month, students, staff, and community members engage in learning about First Nation, Métis, and Inuit histories, in addition to modern realities, as part of our commitment to the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action. As acting chair mentioned, this week also marks the passing of the Honorable Murray Sinclair, the former chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Canada. As we mourn his loss, I would like to acknowledge his many contributions to Indigenous people across Canada. As you may know, my father was a residential school survivor, and growing up, he didn't talk about his experience, and we did not learn about the harm caused by residential schools in school. So much of our learning about Indigenous histories can be attributed to the enduring legacy of Honorable Murray Sinclair. In order to reconcile, he taught us that we must first confront the truths of our shared history. He also shaped Canadian history by making space for our truths and by bringing recognition to harm caused by residential school system. Unfortunately, my father passed away before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was established, and I feel a personal obligation to support the TRC calls to action. So throughout the month of November and every day, I encourage us all to honor the legacy of the Honorable Murray Sinclair by engaging in meaningful reflection on the truths of shared history and the ways that we can help to realize the calls to action. At TDSB, or as we recognize Holocaust Education Week, I had the opportunity today to visit Northern Secondary School to listen to Ellie Gotts speak. Ellie is a Holocaust survivor, a retired engineer, a businessman, and a pilot, and he lives here in Toronto. His personal story of resilience, as well as his message of tolerance, was something that will stay with me, and I was very thankful to be invited by Trustee Laskin to hear his message. And I also want to recognize the staff and the students at Northern for providing this opportunity. It's such a wonderful opportunity for those students. I am delighted to share that we were able, this year's 4th annual Backpack and Schools Supply Drive was the biggest and most successful campaign that we have had to date. Thank you to the many individuals and organizations who contributed monetary and in-kind donations, along with the volunteer support. The drive generated over $140,000 in monetary and in-kind donations, serving 2,812 students in 109 schools. That's a 161% increase from last year's campaign. The impact of the drive was very evident, with many families and staff expressing their gratitude for the support that has truly made a difference in the lives of TDSB families. And before I close, I do have a couple of acknowledgements. First, I know she has left, but I would be remiss if I did not thank Trustee Chernos-Lynn on behalf of the staff of TDSB. Her passion for education and dedication to the students of TDSB has been obvious from the day that I started at TDSB. And personally, I have learned so much from her as I attended ministry budget consultations as delegates and various other meetings with her. So thank you to Trustee Chernos-Lynn. Second, and I think this will be your third acknowledgement, Andrew, so I'm not sure his head will fit through the door on the way out. But Andrew has played, I want to acknowledge that this is Andrew's final board meeting, and that he has been with the board for over 30 years. He began his career as a planning assistant with the North York Board of Education, and he's mostly recently, as we know him, served as assistant planning officer. Throughout his career, Andrew has played a critical role in conducting numerous accommodation studies that have shaped TDSB's landscape. Two notable accomplishments that stand out to me: the implementation of full-day kindergarten across 400 elementary schools, that's huge, and the secondary program review, again, another huge undertaking. But Andrew's proudest achievement was his involvement in the development of the long-term program and accommodation strategy. The strategic roadmap to guide the TDSB's program and accommodation decisions into the 21st century is such an important document for the TDSB. So again, please join me in extending our deepest thanks to Andrew for his remarkable contributions to the TDSB and wishing him all the best in his future endeavors. So this concludes my update this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Interim Director Stacy Zucker. We now move on to item number 11, declaration of possible conflict of interest. Trustees, if you have any conflict of interest on the item, Trustee Dawson? Are you able to stand up?
Apologies, Chair. Through the Chair, I have conflict with 15.23 and 15.31.
Thank you. Do you want to declare, do you want to say what the conflict is?
Sure. I work for a large childcare services provider, and I don't want any sort of conflict perceived or known. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Laskin?
Mr. Chair, I declare conflict for an item that was in private session because my daughter is a teacher in the system.
Thank you. I'm going to pass the chair to Vice Chair Rajwani today. I have a conflict on number 15.4, number 1, which leads with 705 Progress Avenue from Toronto Lands Corporation. I work with an organization that is a tenant in that complex, so either perceived potential or real conflict of interest may arise, so I'm declaring myself out of that vote. Any other conflict of interest? Okay, seeing none, we move on to the next item. Yeah, so we have the list of items on consent agenda, that is all of the items except one item that is being pulled out. The item that's being pulled out is 15.3, item 3, Math Achievement Action Plan Report 1. So that is the only item that's been pulled out for discussion, Math Achievement Action Plan Report 1. The way we would move the vote would be the items that have been declared as conflict of interest would be taken off. So first vote would be all of the items except those items that were declared as conflict of interest. So all items except 15.23, 15.31, and 15.41. Can I have a mover and a seconder to accept all the other items on consent? Trustee Laskin, Trustee Goss, all those in favor? Okay. Anyone opposed? Okay. That's carried. We will now move on to 15.23. This is the one if Trustee Dawson could be marked as abstaining from the vote on that. 15.23, which is on Ernest Public School Community Planning Partnership Lease Agreement with Family Daycare Services. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Trustee Davis, Trustee Rajwani. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried. We move on to item 15.31, which is Early Years Community Advisory Committee Annual Report. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Trustee Williams. Anyone seconding it? Trustee Ging. All those in favor? Trustee King. Anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried. I'm going to pass the chair to Vice Chair Rajwani to call the vote on the next item, 15.4.
May I request a mover and a seconder for this item? Trustee Laskin, Trustee Srikancharaja. All those in favor? Any opposed? That has carried. Chair, back to you, Chair Shen.
Thank you very much. All right, so I think we've passed all the items except that item number 15.33, Math Achievement Action Plan. I would like to ask the director to let us know who will be presenting on this report.
Thank you, and through the chair, I will ask Executive Superintendent Panchitopoulos to speak to this, please.
Thank you. So the Toronto District School Board has developed a comprehensive math achievement plan for the 24-25 school year. It's focused on improving students' math outcomes through various strategies and collaborative efforts. The plan is built on previous successes, recognizing our challenges, and aims to enhance student engagement and educator practices so that we can continue to improve overall math achievement in schools throughout the system. Data from the EQAO assessments indicates that we continue to show some progress. Our results suggest that nearly 60% of grade 3 students, 52% of grade 6 students, and 57% of grade 9 students scored at or above the provincial standard of 70%. TDSB is one of 3 GTA boards to have improved by 4% over this 3-year period. The grade 3 students in math learning partner schools saw a 4 percentage point increase in students scoring at or above the provincial average of standard of 70. Grade 6 students also improved with a 2 percentage point increase. We do also recognize that our grade 9 students showed a 4% decrease in performance. We are therefore closely monitoring and addressing the needs of grade 9 students this year. I'd like to take a moment and show and look at math in our non-MLP schools, where there was a slight decrease across EQAO grades, a 1 percentage point decrease in both grades 3 and 9, and a 3 percentage point decrease in grade 6. This data, therefore, shows the early positive impact of the ministry's MLP initiative here in TDSB. We do face several challenges that we must address. First is student attendance. It's a complex issue that significantly impacts academic success, necessitating a multifaceted approach to improve engagement and attendance rates. Additionally, the attendance of educators at professional learning sessions has been affected by our supply teacher shortages, particularly in smaller schools. Finally, we must improve our communication and our coherence in delivering math education, specifically in implementing curriculum fidelity and research-based instructional strategies across the system. The Math Achievement Action Plan does outline several critical strategies for the upcoming year. Our primary focus is on enhancing professional learning opportunities for educators, including specialized training sessions on early years math skills, developing multiplicative reasoning, unlocking fractions, and algebraic reasoning. Notably, our new offerings for this school year will include partnerships with educators and experts in the field, such as Dr. Alex Lawson and Dr. Ruth Beatty, to provide targeted supports for educators. At the core of our approach is a recognition of the importance of fidelity in curriculum implementation. In other words, we emphasize the need for educators to adhere closely to the Ontario curriculum. The professional learning focuses on understanding the mathematics learner, ensuring that mathematical tasks, interventions, and supports are relevant and responsive to the diverse needs of our students. In addition to professional learning, the plan emphasizes the importance of monitoring and support. Close tracking of math progress, particularly in math learning partner schools, will be conducted through superintendent visits and regular review cycles aligned with system and school improvement initiatives. Collaboration is a central theme this year, with partnerships established with various groups, including Global Competencies, the Urban Indigenous Education Center, and Special Education. These collaborative efforts will produce more math professional learning for classroom educators and principals so that we consistently see research-based, high-impact teaching strategies focused on explicit instruction and assessment in classrooms across the system. The plan this year also includes a new performance indicator, KPI, that reflects the number of students on a modified individual education plan, ensuring that the needs of all of our learners are considered in the action plan. This is in addition, of course, to the EQAO data, those KPIs that we will continue to monitor. To summarize, the TDSB's Math Achievement Action Plan for 24-25 is a strategic initiative designed to address the challenges and successes we have started to see in math education. Through collaboration, enhanced professional learning, and focused on monitoring and support, the TDSB is posed to improve math outcomes for our diverse student population. We aim to create more inclusive, effective math learning environments for all students, emphasizing engaging students in their math learning journey. The emphasis is always on equity, engagement, and educator development, representing a comprehensive approach to fostering positive, effective learning environments in math. Finally, I want to reiterate the TDSB's unwavering commitment to equitable math outcomes. We're dedicated to ensuring that all students across the system have opportunities to excel in math. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to questions and comments at this time. Trustee Lee?
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. I want to thank staff for the work that's been done on this one. I think a couple of years ago or a few years ago, we've launched our first math plan that was an overall framework, I believe, on how we want to approach math. And now I'm happy to hear that we are tying our math achievement to EQAO test scores, which is a good measurement on the overall progress of the students in our system. I do want staff to help me clarify on what our target is when it comes to this plan. What do we think good looks like, and what achievement do we want our students to have?
Thank you. I think I heard the question, Trustee Lee, but it was a little bit hard on this side, so I just want to make sure that I have correctly heard it. So I believe you're asking for what the target is that correct?
Correct, thank you. This mic is not designed for me.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to double check, thank you. We are looking at specifically having schools focus on the students that are not yet receiving provincial standard in terms of their achievement. So that will be different from school to school. In terms of a system-wide target overall across the district, we will be looking at identifying what that would be appropriate. Most school boards would have an increase of approximately 1% as a target per year, but we are still confirming if we are able to look at that specific number or a different number. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, appreciate that answer. But from an overall perspective, if I were to ask staff, hey, at what point will we say that we're happy with the overall achievement of our students? What does that look like? Right, let's just use this percentage scored at above provincial standard of 70%. Where do we want that number to be? Yes, if that. Oh, looking at me.
Sorry to see. Hey, do you want to take that?
Thank you. We're making eye contact across the.
Okay, I thought she was looking at me. I thought too much.
Thank you, and through the chair. Very important question. Trustee Lee, thank you. Sorry, we're not in committee. We had a robust conversation at PSSE and really pleased to continue it today. I am going to invite Dr. Cameron to talk about the complexity of this item and welcome an opportunity to talk to you about kind of what we're thinking in the many pieces of evidence and data that we're wanting to show to the board through time. At many points through the year to show our progress. But Dr. Cameron, if you could just talk about the complexity of TDSB in comparison to other boards in very specific relation to Trustee Lee's question, and he is virtual, Trustee Lee.
Oh, he's virtual.
Thank you, Associate Director Trisco. Good evening. Yeah, hello, Trustee Lee. If I'm right, you're asking what's the percentage that we would be happy with? That issue is an issue that I think is complicated because in all of these results there is really very positive stories around hard work of students, hard work of teachers, and school-based success stories. You'll recognize that we have 472 elementary schools. So inside of that, there isn't a particular number centrally that you're saying of the 13,000 or 14,000 or 15,000 kids that are taking the EQAO test. There isn't a percentage that you could actually say that's the right one. That's what I'm happy about because there's as much in terms of provincial, so level 3-4 is the provincial standard. There's also students in our board that are not actually and should be hitting that provincial standard, and there's students that are hitting above their weight, and there's teachers that are hitting above their weight in relation to getting students there. So to suggest that there's a particular percentage that would be a really strong percentage for us is difficult at the central levels. Now, what Executive Superintendent Pangiotopoulos was talking about, which is very important, I think, in what you're asking, is at a school level, that's a very different conversation, and it's a really very valid and a conversation that teachers should be having. Schools can have those kinds of conversations because the context is so important in relation to what you're asking. Context being who's in those spaces, context being what are the areas, the needs and strengths, context being what is the levels of engagement, and how do we develop and broaden and deepen math conceptual understanding. Those kinds of questions, which the Math Learning Partner schools and the Math Learning Partner educators and central folk and also teachers and school principals are working very diligently on, are the kind of question you're asking is a very school-based question. For you to ask that question centrally, to say what's the percentage? Is it 52? Is it 53? Is it 54? I did a review of target setting that we have established over the last 20 years in terms of SMART targets that the TDSB has used in the past. Those kinds of targets, while they're very good, realistic, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound, while those are very good ways to think about a school-based or a classroom-based move in relation to a test like EQAO, they're not so helpful for us to talk through in terms of when we're talking about 13 or 14,000 kids, because the needs are so diverse inside of that to set a particular target and say, yeah, we did it. We went up. It was 3 percentage points. We wanted 4 percentage points. It's a very complicated and almost futile attempt at it. So the SMART targets in the past have been set at 10%. They've never hit 10% in 20 years that the board tried that. It went down to 5%. It took, in fact, if you look at 2004 out to today at 2024, it took that long to get the target that was probably established in 2004, right? So I think we have to understand what central targets do. Are they aspirational? What are we trying to do with them? And so I think that's a really important conversation to have. But I think we need to have that conversation in terms of what Associate Director Shishko said around the complexity of their use of them and the usefulness of them in terms of SMART targets and how they're established at the school level, at the family school level, at the LC level, the central level. Each of those spaces might have a need that's very different in relation to establishing targets.
If I could add, thank you very much, Dr. Cameron. We are relentlessly pursuing the achievement at level of the expected level of 3-4 by EQA, as measured by EQAO, for all students who can reach that potential. And we believe that all students can reach their potential with the right supports. What we're trying to build, Trustee Lee, is a culture within our schools for our staff to know precisely which students are not meeting targets and to be providing interventions and supports. We're going to be providing you an array of data that we are collecting and to be showing our progress through time as the months progress. So as an example, we are pursuing technology to be monitoring intervention. So if a student is working on a math skill and we are introducing technology as an intervention, that our educators will be able to record online their assessment, and after the intervention, a post-assessment to see their progress and to be using that as a tracker to be measuring something that is happening in real time. EQA is going to be one measure among many that we are looking at to show the overall progress of the implementation. This is a very long answer without a number to be provided to you, and I'm sure that's probably very frustrating for you. But what we're hoping to show you is actually many pieces of data that are more meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Through Mr. Chair, do we have any guidance from the province and the ministry on what they like this number to be?
Thank you for the question. No, we don't.
Okay. I appreciate the feedback from staff. And I understand what we're trying to do, but unfortunately, I find it incomprehensible and unacceptable that we would pursue a plan and we would do work to deliver education every day to our students without an achievement target on a system level. There are factors that we have to consider. There are adjustments that we have to make, but we need to understand what good looks like. Otherwise, it is very hard for our entire system of over 40,000 employees to push towards a singular direction and have a target on where they need to get to. I understand that, Associate Director, you have expressed that I may feel frustrated by the fact that we didn't get answer on a number. I feel like our parents are going to be even more frustrated when they see these numbers, where almost 1 out of every 2 grade 6 students are not meeting the provincial standards for math, and almost 2 out of every 5 students in grade 3 and grade 9 are not meeting that same target. If we were selling a product and we told the customer that between 2 out of 5 times or 1 out of 2 times when the customer tried to use the product, it might not work, we would sell 0 of that product. So from a parent perspective, no matter how frustrated I might feel towards this situation, I think they're even more frustrated. And the fact that our system doesn't have a goal on what good looks like, the fact that we now have a math plan without a target, I think that doesn't build confidence. And that's confusing and concerning to me, especially when we did our multi-year strategic plan, when we consulted parents on what they feel to be important, the first thing they said, or at least the first thing that was on our report, was accountability. They wanted us to be accountable for what we do. They wanted us to measure ourselves and know where we have to get to. So I understand that it is tough to have a target right now, and I appreciate that the staff team haven't had one, but I'd like staff to work with the ministry to find out what that expectation for us actually is under the scope of the Education Act. Now, I haven't spoken to anyone of my trustee colleagues on this yet, but I'd like to move a motion from Business Arising, or however I consult with governance on what to do. I'd like to move a motion to ask the director to consult with the ministry on what the expectation for students achieving at or above the student provincial standard for math should be. Now, can I ask, through you, Mr. Chair, ask governance staff on how we can do this best? Hold on, I don't know how to do it.
Sorry, go ahead, Associate Director.
Thank you very much. And Trustee Lee, please know that we consult with the ministry repeatedly, monthly. The language that they're using in their math strategy is that they expect boards to level up. That's their language. We are in conversation with them about citing a 1% increase, which was what I believe Dr. Cameron had mentioned earlier, which in the scale of the TDSB is very, very large in its scope. What staff are trying to express and causing frustration, I think, for you, is that in some of our schools, that's not enough because much more than 1% of the students are not achieving the expectation of level 3-4. So we're wanting to expect and empower our school leaders to be expecting much higher results when they have more students who are struggling. And that is why we are wanting to customize that data point. But in short response, 1% increase in EQAO is substantive across our district and would be a number we have been talking to the ministry about, but it's not, again, an expectation that is required yet by them with specificity. So please know that we are in consultation monthly.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the answer from the Associate Director. However, I stand my point on the direction to staff because I would like to get a response from the ministry on what that target actually looks like. What do they expect? I know the goal is to improve by 1% every year. That's a process. But what is good enough? What does good look like? We should know this so that we can plan, right? Is the expectation 80% or 60% or 100? That makes a difference to what our staff need to do and how they should focus. And I'd like to still move that motion if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Lee, if you can email some wordings to governance team.
Would it be a business arising?
arising? Yeah,
Okay,
we'll do
thank you.
business arising. As there's no particular recommendation here to change the wording around, so it'll be business arising. We can add you to the list, Trustee Laskin. Next is Trustee Rajakulasingam, and I have Trustee King, and then myself and Trustee Laskin.
Thank you, through the chair. I wanted to thank System Superintendent Dilworth and Executive Superintendent Pangiotopoulos for their work on this. I've had the pleasure of working alongside System Superintendent Dilworth when she was a superintendent, and I know how passionate she is about numeracy and literacy strategies that build confidence in students. Oftentimes in our school visits, we would talk about thinking classrooms. She would teach me about the importance of students being able to interpret numbers and words and letters versus memorizing. So I know she's such a great person for this project. Oftentimes when we're criticized as a school board, our work, the tremendous work we do on identity, inclusivity, and belonging is often criticized, and our EQAO results are often brought up. And as someone who really struggled in math and never was offered supports, I felt that my sense of belonging and my sense of inclusivity at a school was really impacted by my low sense of confidence. So I do believe that students' abilities in math and numeracy is extremely important and directly relates to their identity, their sense of belonging and inclusivity. So I'm really happy that we're taking the EQA results and taking a further and looking into it closer to see which schools, which students are being impacted by this. I'm very curious to see in future reports. For example, my ward is a ward where a lot of students, most of our students come to school hungry and in need of student nutrition programs. So I'm curious to see how are those schools doing when it comes to their math abilities. So I don't think we can study numeracy and literacy without looking at which students, their experiences, and which schools are impacted. So I'm very happy to see where the direction of this plan is going. I did have a few questions. My first is immersion students studying math. Are we collecting any info on those students? Because I remember when I was in the extended French program, either you really did well in the program, and if you didn't do well, you dropped out. There was no further supports offered. So are we collecting info on French immersion students studying math in French?
Thank you for that. Through the chair, we are not specifically looking at French immersion, but we are collecting the same data we are collecting for the English students. But you've brought up a very good point, and it's definitely something for us to think about in terms of breaking that apart in our data collection. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, I know in other reports, we've heard how race-based or socioeconomic status-based data is maybe a private issue because of the size of the students we're studying. But here it looks like the demographic is much larger. In future reports, can we expect to see those identity-based information?
So at this time, the ministry has not asked for that information. That is something we would have to take under consideration and see if we are able to do that. Thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you. And through the chair, now that we're following the family of schools approach, I know when Assistant Superintendent Dilworth was a superintendent, there's a lot of emphasis on tracking students from when they're in grade 3, then they go to high school. How are those students doing reading-wise? So now that we have this fantastic grouping of schools, are we going to also follow those students to see how they're doing and how that can be incorporated into the clusters?
So you're talking about longitudinal cohort studies, and certainly that is something that we will be open to doing as we gather more data over time, because certainly we want to see that the interventions and the strategies that we're putting in place are leading students to selecting science and math as subjects that they pursue through secondary school, and that, of course, opens them to a wide variety of post-secondary careers. So absolutely, that will be something that we'll be thinking about.
Thank you. And final question is, do we know, or would we be able to further see which schools make up these clusters? And I just want to say thank you to the both of you for your work on this. I feel like my inner student is getting healed as we speak about this. So thanks.
So that's something we will have to look at in terms of the sharing. There are approximately 125 schools.
Thank you. Trustee King.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, staff, again for the presentation. We had quite a bit of discussion on this item at Program and School Services last month. And the feeling there in the discussion was that there were some positive aspects to this report that caught our attention, particularly with the results in grade 3 and the direct results of the Math Learning Partners program that has been invested in and implemented in the system. We really appreciated the good news of the early signs of success in an area of learning that we know is a clear priority for the ministry, it's a clear priority for us strategically, and as we heard, it's a priority for our families, absolutely, and of the students right from kindergarten through grade 12. So we feel that, and I feel that it's really great that we get to have this conversation in this room. We get to ask these questions and really delve in and understand further. But I think that there is some great potential to acknowledging and sharing some of the positives more publicly, even if they are incremental, even if they are early. I think that kind of sharing helps connect and engage some of our families in our approaches to math instruction, into how our students are taking it up and being a part of that more actively because they have an understanding of it. And I also think it helps support public confidence in our system and our staff and all of our students, because they are the ones that are using their skill sets, everything that they come with, to implement this program and let it come to life in our schools, in our classrooms, so that we actually do see these results, again, through our students and on paper here. So I just wanted to get a bit of understanding from staff, knowing that, yes, this is early and, you know, it's early and small progress, and there are challenges as well that are very real that you've highlighted. I just wanted a better understanding of how we're communicating some of this with families, with the public right now, and what you might consider as some broader opportunities or added opportunities to do so.
Thank you. Through the chair, there are many ways that we're communicating. Some of them are more traditional, providing little blurbs for trustees to put in their ward newsletters. We will be doing the same for principals. We also have a parent website that also has an opportunity for us to put good news around our math progress, but also it services parents in terms of providing access to learning with their child, access to digital math tools, games, books, stories even that are mathematically oriented. So there's lots of opportunity there. We're also, we will be presenting at Parents as Partners with the literacy folks and talking about the math work there. I've presented at ward forums. We are always interested in the feedback that we get. We had some really excellent feedback from a parent at Trustee Shan's ward forum that we're definitely looking at and thinking about. So we are looking at as many different ways as possible for us to both inform and solicit input from families and caregivers. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. And again, I do believe that that communication is all wonderful and supportive for our families. I do believe that there's an opportunity to help engage and encourage public education supporters beyond that as well. So I also have a business arising that I'll potentially look to move, and it really just asks for consideration around some of that communication, but it also specifically speaks to the advocacy that we can be doing so that the investment in the program is leveled up to match the kind of expectations that we have to level up in our results.
Thank you, Trustee King. I'm going to pass the chair to Trustee Rajwani. So thank you, staff, for putting this report forward, but also thank you for the work that you're doing in the schools. You know, if there is something I'm equally passionate about after equity is mathematics. And often I don't get to show that in this space, but as somebody who's trained as math teacher and seeing classrooms where students identify themselves as people who hate math, kind of it's a sad moment for me, because I think once people get it, once people start loving it, it's one of those things where you cannot let the subjectivity of the world judge. You know, you're able to kind of experiment quite a bit, engage with that quite a bit, and I do think that we talk a lot about math confidence, which is great now from I also think that we should, if this is not coined already, something like math enthusiasm, that is something that we need to measure, because sometimes it's contagious from educators, and sometimes educators don't feel that. I go into school classrooms, I mentioned this to some teachers, what are we working on? We are working on mathematics, don't you all love it? And that's a sarcastic tone of the educator to the class, and then you kind of get a sense that, they play up on this kind of, this is kind of a hard thing to do, but there's no choice around it. So I think we got to figure out that enthusiasm part a little bit more. If there's a way to measure it, if there's a way to infuse it, if there's a way to sustain it, just like how we're doing love for reading. PD sessions, I think it's critical that we advocate for increased PD session. It's hard for somebody who to go into, especially if math is not their major thing, go into one day PD and be able to come and transform the classroom. So I think it's important for increased advocacy, if the ministry is really serious about this, that we find more resources and more coverage for teachers to do the PD sessions. I know there's some incentives that are not being taken up as much, but there's multiple reasons for why teachers don't take that up. So we got to figure that out a little bit more. We shifting from, I talked about this framing of math priority schools to math excellence schools. How do we make these schools become kind of the sought after place to go to, because they have better equipment, they have trained educators, we have a lot of welcoming things, there's contests happening. It doesn't matter how many kids do well, it's about kids kind of generating that interest. So I think it's important for us to look at the schools that are doing really well and see what the factors are, and we will see that a lot of the factors are externally helping them, whether it be their access to tutoring, or whether it be access to income, or family support and so on, that can, so it's not necessarily the fault of these educators, but it's something that we are doing despite all those challenges. So I think it's important for us to look at that resource gap, not only educators going through professional development, but each of these schools, do they have fancy equipment that people will love to use? Do they have the kind of excitement around learning mathematics? I also think that in many schools, we could see a lot more partnership with community organizations to offer math clubs and after-school programs and so on, because I know a lot of the places don't have those extra support. Parents are not able to send them for private tutoring and so on. So it's important to kind of look at partnership models where after-school programs, a lot of high school young people in many of these would want to do volunteer hours, helping children, and a lot of post-secondary students would come back as well. And I want to go back to the difficulty in EQAO. I have my reservations about it. It's a snapshot kind of evaluation. If you don't have resources to do longitudinal over many years, at least within the same year, have longitudinal data that shows progress, at least for the school to see. It doesn't have to be published in a newspaper report, but at least for the school to see what they're measuring, because there has to be some sort of a target, as Trustee Lee said. At school level, at family of school level, we have to figure out a way to ambitiously go after some things. we won't always meet the targets, and we are afraid because that will be a PR disaster if we don't meet targets. Climate targets, how many of our governments have really met those targets, but it drives us, it keeps us going towards something, it keeps us reminding we got to do better. And I think we have to get out of that fear to think that, if we have target, then we're going to be embarrassed. I think it is part of the aspirational goal that we need to continue to do. So I think having nights where teachers and parents can use some of those math softwares that we promote all the time in slides, but the parents are not able to kind of advance that further. So maybe having some hands-on stuff with parents. So a lot of things have come up. So I think it might be better I think it's practically doing operational stuff, but we would like to see a toolkit that could be applied at each school to make them more effective, I think. I'll stop with that, my time finishing this. Thank you. Okay, I'll go to Trustee Laskin and Trustee. So Trustee Laskin, then Trustee Earhart, and then Trustee Arts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Maybe I'll continue on the stream you were going. Back in 2018, Dr. Carol Campbell did an independent review of assessment and reporting on EQAO and made some recommendations that I wholeheartedly agree with. I am not a fan of EQAO at all. I don't think it does anything to support our kids' love of mathematics. In fact, I think that some of the results really challenge our kids who have anxiety over that specific test, and it does nothing, in my opinion, to prove what they're learning, their satisfaction, or their love in math. So any predominance of using EQAO data, for me, just disadvantages schools and allows real estate agents to determine what's a good school and what's a bad school, and that makes me absolutely insane. Carol Campbell's recommendations really fall in line with where some of the math strategy is going. And I really, when I compared the two, I was really grateful, actually, that those recommendations that the government really did nothing about back in 2018. The money that's spent on EQAO every single year could be so better spent in actually providing resources, human resources, professional learning within our schools themselves. But I would assume with this government, because they want to keep testing the system and rating us, I will imagine EQAO is here to stay. But I would be really upset if that was the value proposition that we put on how our kids are doing in mathematics. Because for me, that is not where we should be heading as a school board. What percentage goes up, what percentage goes down, these are different kids every single year. So the longitudinal issue about how the kids start the year and end the year, the teacher input, the love of math, how math is part of English, is part of science, is part of phys ed, that it's not just a little box that this is math now. We need to go into our schools and kids need to tell us how much they love math. We're waiting for that. So I'm very supportive of the direction staff is going, but I am not at all supportive that we use EQAO as the thing to prove that somehow our kids are doing well. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Laskin, Trustee Earhart.
Thanks very much. And I'll just say to that, as a parent with an EQAO experience last year, I just want to say how grateful I was to the TDSB for making that an experience where I observed for, talking with parents afterwards and also like being very curious with children that they were seeking to make it as stress-free a process as possible, that it was another thing that was happening. Because that, as a parent, that was a big concern for me, especially with children with special needs and how children after the pandemic feel about being tested, because I know they also know that they feel behind. They can feel that from us as adults. And so it was very nice to see the efforts being made at school level, even though there is this big push and we all want to push for the success in math, to try to create the space for exploration and joy at school level. I'm very hopeful that we can rewrite the culture of math to make it a space for enthusiasm. So I'm very hopeful for that, and I was very grateful as a parent to be seeing some of that in action. I have a few questions. So I did want to ask quickly about gender, and just if what we could say about gender in math, and if there is anything to say about gender in math. And then I was struck by the comment around the level up goal from the ministry, and I'd like to hear specifically about the funding that's coming with that goal of leveling up. What funding and what supports are being provided? My observation is that we're seeing a lot of digital tools, but not a lot of support to staff. And while digital tools, we're in a digital world, are really important, without manipulatives like this board has advocated for, without the funding for the release of time for learning, which this board has advocated on in this past year, and without more staff, without more after-school tutoring supports, I don't see how leveling up is realistic. Leveling up has to come with a leveling up of support. So I'd be very interested to hear what the ministry was proposing for its leveling up. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair, the ministry's funding for the Math Learning Partners is 5.1 and a little bit of change. Staffing for that includes the system board leads, 2 superintendents, as well as 24.5 math learning partners. And that would be 24 math learning partners that work in our clusters, and then 0.5 hybrid, so 1 individual that is working as a 0.5. We also have, as part of that amount, 1.6 and change for digital math tools, as you mentioned, trustee. Finally, we have our Math AQ, which is a separate REP of approximately $220,000, and that subsidizes Math AQ courses that we provide. The payment is made after successful completion of those courses. So that is the funding outlaid by the government. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could also add in regards to leveling up, I think that phrase is being used, trustees, because the ministry knows this is complex work. And our goal is to be a leading edge board in showing many data points and evidence, quantitative and qualitative, that show the complexity of change management and supporting students reaching their full potential in the aspirations we have for them, and to love math and be successful at math. So we're really excited about the work that we're doing, and we can't wait to show you in the months ahead.
Okay, thank you. Even I can do that math, that with the number of schools we have, with 24 math learning partners, that's not a lot in the context. So I mean, it's my view that it would be nice to see more funding support specifically in this area. And I'll just end on another positive note that I was very pleased to see in schools in the ward I represent. I'm just going to highlight Blake School in particular, and their weekly newsletter has started to put a math puzzle. And it's been a lot of fun to get the Ken-Kens every week. And I have heard that students are very enthusiastic about completing those math puzzles as part of the weekly newsletter that the principal and VP put out. And I think it's such a lovely way to bring a bit of fun into math for the whole community. And so thanks very much to the work of principals and teachers in this very important work.
Thank you, Trustee Earhart. Trustee Arts is next.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak to some of Trustee Laskin's points. Her experience has been my experience since before I was a trustee, not just from a parent perspective and a trustee perspective, but from having worked directly with people who used to work for EQAO, and their perspective of the test is not actually positive. However, today, Trustee King and I on the education program work team got to hear from research staff at EQAO. And it is the first time in all the years that I heard something different. And today they talked about, and these will come when the minutes come from the work team, everybody will have access to the presentation. But this first time they talked about the whole child. They talked about the holistic approach. They talked about the very large number of kids across the province that score 2.7 to 2.9. So they are just on the cusp of meeting expectations. Who are those kids? What's keeping them from getting a 3, which is the expected score? They talked to what the test actually measures. So I'm going to protest to the use of good at any point in this, because this is not a good or bad thing. All of these kids are good. They're good at math. They can be good at math. They are also focusing on the part of the test where they ask kids now, do you enjoy math? Do you think you're good at math? And so that is a huge part of the EQAO research. It's going to be a huge part of their new focus. So I will say that's my experience. I have 3 kids who got A's in math, who are been described as creative math learners, who score 2.7, all 3 of them, every test. And it's frustrating for them. EQAO was always a very disappointing experience for them. So it was really heartwarming to hear for the first time from the organization that they are thinking about, do kids like math? Is this test meeting them? And a really big conversation around special education. Does this test serve kids with special education? A large number of kids with special needs fall into that 2.7 to 2.9 score. And how is the test failing them, essentially? How is it not serving their needs? What do they need to rethink? It was very hopeful. And the other thing I noticed today is that the EQAO last year, or actually a few months ago, when I checked the EQAO website, it was a very much a partisan government-produced website. There was lots of propaganda on it about how wonderful the government is. They've overhauled their website. It is very research-based. It is a very different focus, and it doesn't lend itself to the things like the Fraser report, which drives us nuts. It was heartwarming. I had a good perspective for the first time on how this aspect might actually be to serve school boards. I mean, it's supposed to be the Ministry of Education's measure for understanding the delivery of curriculum. It's always supposed to have been for their research, not for anyone to be judging children or children to be judging themselves. And I was very heartened to hear that they're moving in a direction that hopefully they're looking at moving in a direction that supports the do I love math? And hopefully we can have more of that. And kids being confident that they're good in math. And that they're actually going to look at all those different pieces, special education needs, differences in personality, socioeconomic status, that may be getting in the way of students taking a standardized test. So just wanted to give that perspective, and we can share the notes when they're available.
Thank you, Trustee Yard. Trustee Pei.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I make some comments, I want to ask some questions from the staff. Through you, Mr. Chair. Number one, I want to know the EQAO scores, the overall EQAO scores, compare this year to last year. I want the number. I want to know what the percentage increase or decrease. For each grade.
Thank you, and through the chair. As from the committee's report, a review of the math EQAO results from last year to this year shows a decline of 2% in grade 3 students who attain level 3 or above on the assessment. In grade 6, there was a decline of 1%, and for students taking the grade 9 EQAO, the results declined by 1%. This is for the full TDSB. The data that I gave out earlier was specifically around MLP schools and schools that are not MLP schools.
So I just want to confirm, Mrs. Stubbs, through you, Mr. Chair. So the overall performance of our school in terms of EQAO score for math actually decreased compared last year.
If I may, and through the chair, I think the context is important, Trustee Lee, and we have to always be looking at what is happening at the provincial level as well. Sorry, Trustee Pay, sorry. You're so close to me, Trustee Lee, and we've had this conversation all evening. It's important to have the provincial context, and we tried to illustrate that in the report. If there's a specific question you're wondering about the comparison with the province in a particular grade, that may help us answer your query.
Okay, thank you. So Director Srisco, through you, Mr. Chair. So we're talking about provincial average, so okay. Let's talk about our neighboring school board performance. How do our performance compare to theirs? Can staff give me the number of EQAO score of York Regional District School Board?
Thank you, and through the chair. I'm going to invite Dr. Cameron to speak to this, if I may begin, Trustee Pay. We need to be very careful as we compare ourselves to other districts with very, very different circumstances for students and socioeconomic status, volume, or sorry, enrollment of students, comparatively LOI status, and so on. But I will ask Dr. Cameron to speak more deeply about York Region. They are a consistently high-performing board, know a little bit about them, but Dr. Cameron can go into further detail.
Through the chair, I don't have York Region's numbers or Peel's numbers to hand. They're readily available, and certainly Trustee Pay, I can give you links to their web pages and or go on their interactive EQAO site. I think the point you're trying to make here is how do we compare that? We TDSB can't be compared to these different school boards because we're fundamentally much larger with a lot different diversity of groups of students. Our school board is 14% of the province. So if you're going to compare us to a board, as I said earlier on a conversation around comparison and how well we do against like boards, you would have to compare us to Dade County, New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, big city school districts. Those are the ones that you would need to have a comparison to get to actually get an understanding of the comparison. Unfortunately, the state standardized tests in those areas are different than the provincial standardized tests we have. So the only comparison that we would look at that is a good comparison would be post-secondary school education access to college and universities. And when we look at that data, we do very well in comparison. When you're looking at the students are fourth year students coming out of our system. So that's the only real comparison I would bring to the floor from research, from reliability, validity reasons. We cannot be compared to these other boards because we're so fundamentally different. You could look at our province. We are often in line with the province. We have gone down a little bit on from last year in grade 9 math, but we went up 4 percentage points in the previous year. So we went from 53 to 57%, and we held that 4 percentage point gain, which is significant. 4 points is significant. 1 point isn't so significant in relation to is something happening in terms of grade 9, and it's different for grade 3 and 6. So that's probably as far as I would go with comparisons, though.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't get it. So, Dr. Cameron, you said our performance in terms of EQAO scores went up this year compared to last year.
No, in grade 9, EQAO math went up 4 points in 22-23 and stayed up. It's at 57. It went up to 57 from 53 and stayed up to 50. It was at 56 this year. So the 4-point gain, the thing we're looking at there is the 4-point gain, which is significant. Did we hold it or did we fall back to 53 or 52%? And we didn't. We held it, roughly speaking. We were 1 point down. There's variation in this stuff, but we held it. In other words, we're at 56, which is closer to 57. So we held that big 4-point gain is what I'm telling you.
So, Mr. Chair, when does the mass action plan started? Is that started 2 years ago?
Sorry, through the chair, the math action plan started last fall.
Okay, thank you. So why we compare 2 years ago results? We should compare last year when the mass action plan in place. We're going to see the results of this mass action plan, whether it's work or not. We should compare last year. I don't understand why the research department telling me that use 2 years ago result compare this year and telling me the mass action plan actually worked when our EQA score decreased.
Thank you, and through the chair, what I can be saying to that question is the province has been having a consistent focus on mathematics for quite some time, as we have, when EQAO is used as a measure, consistently lower scores than reading and writing. So before this recent government's new math strategy, there was something called the renewed math strategy. And the TDSB developed alongside the ministry a math strategy to go along with that initiative. This is more recent expectations, and the gain that we saw 2 years ago was substantive. And so we were celebrating that we held that. Overall, what we can say is that our data for EQAO, the province had trends of ups and downs, and for the most part, we imitated those trends. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I heard Dr. Cameron said, okay, it doesn't have the data for where DSB's EQAO scores. But I did remember that it did say that we do have the data for Peel region, Durham, Hamilton, because we're better than those board. But unfortunately, we don't have the data that's better than us. How that happen?
Thank you, and for the question, the magic of staff working behind the scenes, we looked up York Region District School Board, and indeed very strong results at grade 3. They have 70.7, grade 6, 63.9, and grade 9, 69.2, all achieving level 3 and 4. What I can be expressing with very strong certainty is that the student population in York Region is very different than Toronto, particularly from a socioeconomic status perspective, as well as a diversity perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, just to add, you mentioned some of the other boards, but just to add that we did outperform Toronto Catholic at 55, Durham at 53. Peel was also at 53, and Durham Catholic at grade 6 level.
Thank you very much. So we do have the data. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, my next question would be regarding research. I'm a research person. I have done research before, so we're already proud of our research department. So I want to ask, through you, Mr. Chair, research department question. Have you ever done any correlation study regarding the student engagement level and the success about their EQA scores. Because I do see that only 57% of students achieve 90% attendance. And our school's average for EKU scores recover around 50%. Have you ever done any research on that?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. Can I get some clarification? What exactly are you asking about in terms of a study between student engagement? Are you suggesting, are you asking us if we looked at attendance as a proxy measure of engagement? Are we looking at engagement broadly speaking? What could you go a little bit further in your question for clarification?
I'm asking the attendance. I mean, this attendance reports seeing that 50% student matching that 90% requirement. Because I do see that engagement is the key. If the student doesn't engage, they're not going to be successful. Sorry, can you hold on my clock? Just keep running. Can you put back 10 seconds, please?
Through the chair, do you?
Point of order, please put back 10 seconds. Thank you.
Well, I'll give you 10 seconds extra afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, it's actually now changed, so.
Thank you.
I wouldn't use attendance as a proxy for engagement, with all due respect to your research and in terms of how we're looking at engagement. Engagement is, broadly speaking, a very complicated part of understanding. It's part of it is perception, part of it is enjoyment, part of it is, part of it's varied in terms of engagement around a wide array of things. You'll see that around 50% of students that got a level 4 in EQO in the province also indicated they weren't confident in mathematics. So perception is also, in terms of how you connect that or how it correlates to or is associated with a demonstration of understanding, is also complicated. And it's not, the association isn't a 1-for-1 or even a 0.6 or a 0.7 association in terms of a very close association. There is closer associations in relation to outcome measures as it pertains to environmental factors like poverty, parent education, the things that we're measuring with the LOI. Attendance is also very much associated with those measures. So it goes up and down by around 10 percentage points in relation to when you look at schools that have higher proportions of kids coming from economic scarcity. Attendance is a construct of a lot of different things. We'll probably be able to get into that because it's a really important measure as well, but it's not a measure that is a straight 1-for-1 higher attendance means higher engagement. Yes, attendance is critical in relation to being in school, and you have to be in school to learn. So there is that association, but to suggest that that is a measure, in other words, of deepened engagement, isn't. There's many factors involved in absenteeism rates and attendance. So I would be very careful with looking at those two. Having said that, attendance has been in the past one of the most important indicators at elementary school for post-secondary school access. We followed around, for 10 years, we followed students and did a trajectory work and looked at indicators inside of elementary schools that had an effect for post-secondary school education opportunity, college and universities. We found that if you missed more than 10% of your elementary school, and this was any particular grade in elementary school, you had a 50% chance of not going on to college and university. So we recognized the value of it in terms of that. That's part of the reason why when we were working with the ministry, they came with a 90% attendance rate. That has now changed for us a little bit. We are seeing a jump in absenteeism since the pandemic. So we're trying to get a sense of that. And I think we've talked about this at the board floor, that will be a separate report. So we have looked at that. We are doing a lot of different item analyses in relation to census items and how much we can cluster them in different ways and think about them as in indices and see how closely they're associated with achievement of different things. The fact that absenteeism is in the math strategy is a ministry-specific construct, whereas absenteeism, as I think absenteeism rate or attendance rates, I would say, much largely speaking, is a construct of whole school work and whole school learning, as well as the opportunity to go to school and also the relationship that parents and communities have with school. And that changes in patterns across the grades from early JK, SK to grade 1 out to grade 12. And that pattern is pretty stable too when we've looked at 15 years of data. So there's a lot of stuff in there. It's a very interesting part of what we do in terms of studying and looking for things that make that are significant enough that we work with schools and school principals to figure out, this is important. Go further into those things, but to measure absenteeism and connect it directly to a EQAO assessment and suggest that that's an engagement measure isn't something that we would have done in that conversation.
Okay, so you, Mr. Chair, what the staff think is valuable? We do a research in terms of the student engagement level in my study, how they can improve their learning experience and their performance EKAU. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that full question. Could you, Trustee Pei, say it again?
I am asking for a research question. That is about we try to study the engagement level of the students correlating to their performance for EKAU or their math confidence.
Right now, we have not seen a correlationship with just simple descriptive analysis in relation to that. We're in the process of going a little bit deeper in relation to perception of confidence in terms of math outcomes. The descriptive statistical work we have done, looking at provincial numbers and as well as ours, they're not associated. It's not dissimilar to looking at suspension rates and suggesting that has an effect on perceptions of whole school safety when we see that whole school safety is very high, regardless of whether suspension rates are higher or lower in comparison with a high school. So we often don't see those associations when we're matching those kinds of data together. We are interested in engagement, but engagement as it pertains, it would be a much more interesting study around math engagement if we work with our math learning partner schools as an example, or our math learning partner educators, and started to deepen an understanding, qualitatively speaking, of what engagement looks like in a math learning class. What does deep learning math look like, and how are students engaged with pedagogic work, which is part and parcel to what the math team has talked about tonight around explicit instruction, informative assessment, and looking at a variety of constructs around good assessment work in terms of pedagogy and good instructional work in terms of what's going on. That's all part and parcel to deepened engagement, and that's a much more qualitative construct to pull out of and to look at and to work with specifically with schools and math learning partner educators, as opposed to looking at, broadly speaking, an absenteeism rate across a whole school.
Okay, thank you for your very detailed answer, but I'm asking a very simple question. Do you think it's available research to do some correlation to understand whether student engagement level correlating to the performance of their math scores at EKU?
I think I answered that, Trustee Pei.
I just want to, I just want to know yes or no. Do you think it's valuable, or are you doing something?
That's not a yes or no answer, and I think I've answered that in specific details in terms of an EQAO test, and to find out reliability, validity, constructs, and engagement is an enormously complex idea. To suggest that a particular sample of students are more or less engaged and thus are doing better or worse in a math test, like EQAO is I've never seen a study like that. I don't think people would engage in a study like that because it'd be so complicated to even bound, even if you'd want to bound the notion of who is and who isn't deeply engaged. And engagement is very, it fluctuates. A student might be a fantastic math student that sits in and takes a math test in EQAO is completely disengaged and doesn't do well in that performance. So that's not a study I would conduct. I think I've talked about, broadly speaking, the areas that we're really interested in and how we're using research.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up question. I do see that, you know, the students' confidence in terms of math, they decreased from 63% in grade 3 to 42% in grade 9. What happened here? Sorry, Mr. Chair, my clock still keep running down.
Are you talking about grade 3 and grade 6?
I'm talking about from grade 3, grade 6, 7, 8, 9. So you look at the pattern, 63%, 50% to 42%.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's a consistent pattern across all learning. When you start looking at, when you ask students from grade 4 out to grade 12, anything that has to do with engagement in learning, deepened engagement in learning, enjoyment of learning, active participation in classroom, and also, broadly speaking, associated with higher proportions and lower proportions of report card performance, there is a decline in across the system from grade 1 out to grade 12. That's been typical since 2006. So I'm not surprised at all that was the case for grades 3, 6, and 9 in terms of confidence.
Okay, my last question is talking about, like, you know, teacher engagement level. I do see that for MLP schools, 50% you know, teacher take a variety of you know, continuing education courses, while only 28% non-MLP teacher take any additional you know, a continuing education course. Would that be a reason why we have a decreased score in non-ILP schools compared to MLP school?
Thank you, Trustee Pei. That would be the last question. Yep. So, Trustee staff, please respond to that.
Thank you. This is certainly one of the challenges that we have identified. One of the benefits of having an MLP school is that we do have coaches that are job embedded in the school, which may be a correlation to attendance to outside professional learning, but also a reminder that we are globally experiencing challenges with occasional teacher fill rates in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Pei. That's the end of speakers list. So you have a question? Oh, okay. Trustee Didi with his, no problem.
Everybody awake? I just want to focus on the subject of some of the questions from a couple of my colleagues, and I have a disagreement about the focus on EQAO. I feel the focus on centrally operated measurements like that across a system as large as ours breeds mediocrity. It moves us away from the best teaching practices, which need to be individualized and need to be made to measure to the needs of the student. They're counter to anything that is student-focused. They're counter to the best science practices that pedagogical scientists have been able to provide over the many years, decades. And they stem from the notion that we can come up with management solutions to human problems, the McDonaldization of our education, creating fit pegs that we can put in a factory. We can market education, we can sell it better, we can rank our schools, we can rank our children, and that will somehow equate to better education. It's a false analogy based on false premises that does not work. I want to commend staff for the work that they're doing. And much like many other problems in society, whether we want to invest in the solutions is the real question. not whether or not we went up by 1% or 2% or whatnot. Do we want to stop poverty? There's solutions for that, but we have to invest in them. Do we want higher numbers in our numeracy measurements across the system, whatever those are, whether centrally made, regionalized, localized at the school level? Then we have to invest. We have to invest in our teachers, and we have to believe that our kids will be able to have better success rates, and we invest in them. I understand that there may be disagreement, and some of the folks in the board believe differently. I'm going to tell you, not even the Ministry of Education believes that we can have those measurements, and they don't provide the means for us to have the centrally defined answers that you're looking for, and that's the answer that staff gave you. And I think that should be sufficient for us. I will be supporting the motion that was put forward by Trustee King and Trustee Dawson. I think we need to do a better job of communicating. And that being said, I think we can do better. Me as an immigrant kid, I came here in grade 5. I didn't learn any math until grade 8. I came from a much poorer system of education. Those two things aren't contradictory, that we can do better, but no, the solution is not to try and devise a centrally managed system that is driven by centrally produced statistical measurements. The EQAO measures whether or not kids can do the test, and that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Didaways. Trustee McLean.
And through the chair, I'm just curious if we had all looked back at to try to correlate the number of the students who don't meet the level 3 and level 4 expectation, whether we at any point try to figure out whether at the end of that particular school year for those students, their teachers felt that their overall attempt to meet the standard was met or not. So versus, a year's worth of learning, a year's worth of evaluation, figuring out at the end of the year, did these students in fact, meet the objectives set out compared to the snapshot of the standardized test that at certain grade levels means that teachers are somewhat obligated to teach to the standardized test. So at the end, I'm trying to, we're identifying these results as they suggest a problem, and I'm wondering if that actually is proven, or if we've made the correlation to, at the end of the school year, some of the children that the standardized test would suggest didn't quite get there, but when we did our report cards, we found that the entire year's worth of work, when evaluated compared to the expectations, that there wasn't a shortfall at all, that these students had, over the broad view, over the time, actually been able to meet the standard.
Thank you for that question. It's an important one. Through the chair, just a reminder that EQAO is a reflection of the curriculum. As an educator, we call them thick questions. They're deep. They hit a number of expectations that we want our students to be able to demonstrate proficiency with. And our educators use EQAO and the practice assessments leading up to the assessment as a way to say, how can I be adjusting my instruction with the goal that they are going to be meeting level 3 and 4. I think your question also is asking about the correlation between EQAO and report cards. And that is an interesting question, and the correlation isn't as strong as we want it to be or it should be. And that is something that we are wanting to work with our educators in. It's called moderated marking. that we have a really good sense among all of our educators, what does a level 3 look like? What does a level 4 look like? So that's where a standardized assessment like EQAO is a bit of a more reliable in the practice assessments, because we're comparing samples of evidence of what level 3 and 4 look like. So that's a roundabout question, Trustee McLean, to say it's not as reliable as we would want to see to compare report cards to EQAO. But again, what we're hoping to do is build tools where we can be helping our educators in doing EQ assessments, practice assessments, to help students prepare, just because it's good pedagogy. They're rich questions, and that we're able to track their assessment through time, so I can better answer that question. And if we could capture that data to see how they did on the practice assessment to what is marked by EQAO, to be showing that progress. And if they're not hitting level 3, 4, can we give an assessment later in that year to show that they have met the standard that we would be expecting? So lots more to come, but doing that comparison with report cards isn't the most reliable for us.
Thank you, and I'll just follow up through the chair. Just anecdotally, my wife was an educator for 35 years and, taught math as an elementary teacher, and periodically would find that because of such a young age, that they would have students who the test was a problem for them and they didn't score necessarily as strong as their year's worth of work in that particular subject matter would indicate. Now, that doesn't, kids need to learn how to take tests. So it's not that taking the test in itself is a problem. It's just that for some children, that the taking of the test artificially affects the results and potentially signals something that may not be as pinpoint accurate as we're talking about fractions of percentages, about success being up 0.3, like it's a really, when you get that into the weeds with it, we treat it like it's an exact science, and standardized tests for grade 3 students may not be an exact science.
We concur completely, and thank you for making the point.
Right. Thank you, Trustee McLean. I don't see any other names here. I don't even need to say I don't see anybody online because everybody's here. That's amazing. So let's move on to a vote on the item. I think, do we have a mover? Can we have a mover and a seconder for the report? Trustee Arts, Trustee Patel. Show of hands, sorry. Show of hands, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to business arising. I know 2 trustees mentioned that. Who wants to go first? Trustee Lee, I think you spoke earlier, so.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move a motion for business arising, just to get some clarification from the Ministry of Education on what our expectations are. I have heard clearly from my colleagues on their reservations and concerns about EQAO. I just want to express my take on what that test actually measures. I agree with you that it doesn't measure the individual ability of a student or of a teacher or even of a school. But when you collect enough data, it does measure the overall achievement of a system. In my opinion, EQAO is used to measure us, all of us in this room, and the system that we represent on how well we're delivering the education and the content in respective to the expectations of the Ministry of Education and the curriculum that has been set for us. It's not meant to measure whether or not Charlie is going to be good at math or they're going to love math. And I don't think students should actually aim for 100 or try their best to prepare for the test, because we want to know where they naturally sit and how well we're doing as a system. But regardless of what our viewpoints on EQAO is, that is the measurement for us. And this test has survived multiple political parties in government, so we can't call the test partisan. In addition, our staff in their math plan, which I applaud, I love the progress and I love the initiative, is using EQAO as a measurement. So that particular measurement is valid in this respect. And what I'm also trying to say is that the bar and the expectations can be different depending on which board we sit in and which geographical location we represent and what our demographic is. For example, I did some quick math. The average grade 3 to 9 EQAO math score last year for the TDSB was 56%. For the YRDSB was 68%. But that's okay because York Region has a different demographic and therefore they might have a different expectation than we do. All I'm trying to do is to have our director ask the ministry so that they can clarify for us that in the context of Toronto and the Toronto District School Board, what is our expectation? And the answer, let me be clear, can come back to say, you know what, there is no expectation, just do better. And that's fine. At least then we know that that is our expectation and we can go back to our parents and say, you know what, the ministry wants us to do better. Here's where we are, here's the provincial average, and this is how we plan to do better. I just would like to have that clarity so we can answer the question. Because right now, if a parent say, hey, you have a math plan, what's your goal? I don't know if I have an answer that I can stand behind. So I hope I can have all of you, my colleagues, to support us in this, in asking this question to the ministry so that we can get clarity and then we can have our staff work towards that clarity. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lee. Seeing no more speakers on this, are we doing e-scribe? Okay, so it'll be on e-scribe. Please vote on e-scribe. Yeah, go ahead, keep going. If Laskin against, Trustee Patel in favor. Dawson. Trustee Larka Rutman left. Trustee Hastings in favor. She's in favor. Trustee Rajan is in favor. Trustee Goss in favor. In favor. She's in favor. Okay. Okay, that carried. Thank you. Trustee King, would you like to introduce your business rising?
Thank you, through your chair. So again, this just relates to our discussion specifically around the early success we've seen with math learning partners and with some of the professional learning. I think that where we see things working well, it's natural for us to ask, are we supporting this to the best extent possible, to the benefit of our schools and students? So there will be 3 updates on math through this year. I'm really hoping that we're going to be back in this room talking about continuous achievements and improvements. In order to do that, I believe that we need to be intentional and proactive about our communication and our advocacy. So as such, the motion on the screen and in front of you reads, whereas the 2023-4 school year marked the introduction of the TDSB Math Achievement Plan, a comprehensive math strategy with targeted support for math learning partner schools, and whereas highlights from the first year of implementation demonstrated hopeful improvements in grade 3 and 6 EQAO results in Toronto District School Board Math Learning Partners schools after just 1 year of Ministry Math Learning Partner support. And whereas to address grade 9 results, staff are providing high-quality professional learning opportunities, such as de-streaming mathematics professional learning sessions, which are being offered in collaboration with OISE to reach all students. And whereas the 23-24 math professional learning attendance was impacted by supply teacher shortages and the lack of funding specific for math release time, impacting small schools disproportionately. And whereas ministry funding previously allocated to support de-streaming, including mathematics, was reduced from $11 million to $160,000 within the 24 to 25 education funding. And whereas equity as a guiding principle is foundational to all of our work, and the communication and successes of our achievement may support public confidence, while communicating the challenges may support advocacy for the funding needed to more wholly support the priorities of the Ministry of Education and our multi-year strategic plan. Therefore, be it resolved that the director consider, 1, developing a strategy to communicate successes in mathematics achievement at the Toronto District School Board, including but not limited to AQAO data, progress data for 23-24 provincial comparisons, and funding barriers to equitable impact and success. Part 2 of that is developing communications, highlighting information inclusive of the student voice, to share with parents, caregivers, and guardians, community members, and partners through both offline and digital channels. And then Part B to this resolution is that the chair write the Ministry of Education requesting an increase of funding to support the hiring of additional math learning partners in the 24-25 school year to intensify support in our math learning partners schools, and also that there's a restoration of funding to support achievement in grade 9 de-streamed mathematics in the 24-25 school year. And that funding was specifically staffing of de-streaming to support student achievement.
Thank you, Trustee King. Before I go to Trustee McLean, did you want to add, Trustee Dawson?
Sure. Thank you. Through the chair, I'll be brief. I was really excited when Trustee King brought the idea of this motion to me. You know, there's this whole narrative out there about being back to basics, and quite frankly, we have never left the basics here at the TDSB. I've been continually impressed by our math department's presentations, their motivation, and also the amazing and creative ways in which they are getting students excited about math. And I think it's really important that we communicate all of those milestones. So I'm very much in support of this motion. I think that it's natural that we should ask for more funding for the math learning partner, or the math leveling up partner, maybe we can call them, because this is a ministry initiative that we have seen early success with, and I'm hoping that they will want to build on that momentum so that we can keep going, moving forward, and seeing the achievement improve in those schools where the math learning partners are situated. And I do think it's an opportunity to eventually expand on that program as well to serve more schools. But for now, definitely investing more resources into the schools that it's being run in, I think is extremely important. And of course, the defunding of de-streaming was very unfortunate. And I think that we can always use more than 11 million, but if we can at least get what we had before, that would go a long way in supporting our students in their math learning. So I hope that you will all support this motion.
Thank you, Trustee Dawson. Trustee McLean. And
Thank the movers for the motion. I want to thank the ministry for the initiative. I'm really excited to receive the report, hear the progress of the report, and the Coles Notes version is I want everyone to achieve the benefits that the small sample size is creating. So I want to spread it as quickly as possible. We know that happens with the money produced the success. So I'm hoping that the ministry and the board will continue to go down this and chase this. And I want to thank the staff and the team for all the efforts to roll out the program and all the educators on the ground responsible for the success and hopefully the continued success. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, and through the chair. Thank you to the mover and the seconder. I wholeheartedly support this motion. Just wondering if the movers would be open to a friendly amendment that the ministry provide funding for release time for the Math Learning Partners schools. That's a suggested amendment as maybe a part 3 or part C to that second part. The chair write the ministry.
And I believe in March of 2024 on that point, as well as math manipulatives based on a previous math report. And Chair Chernoslin wrote the Ministry of Education in April of 2024 on that point, and we did receive a response that was not favorable towards increasing the funding, as I recall. But I am sure that could be referenced in this. I'm making the assumption that it's not referenced because a year has not elapsed since our last advocacy on those points. If we are able to add that and math manipulatives back in here, I think it would be wonderful. And I could draft the language based on our March motion, our motion March 2024, but can we add that back in procedurally?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Orhak. I think like the childcare letter, sometimes we go back and reiterate some of the points from a previous letter in addition, so we can definitely pull those 2 points in to do that. So it won't be a friendly amendment because it's an additional thing. It will have to be seconded, and so it's probably better that we would include. We'll make a note to make sure that we include the previous correspondence as well, if that's okay. So, seeing no other speakers, no. Are we voting on e-scribe? Okay. If we can get the e-scribe up and running, so Trustee King moves it, Trustee Dawson seconded it.
Is he in favor?
Trustee Gauss and Trustee Patel in favor. Trustee Lee in favor. Trustee Rajakulas in left. Oh, there's somebody online. Sorry, 1 second. She's
Roger Singham in favor.
yeah. Thank you, Trustee Rajakulas. Okay. We good? Right, that carries. Thank you, everyone. I think the last item is adjournment, if I have the right order. Yeah. Trustee Laskin, Trustee Rajwani, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much. Have a great night, everyone.